Welcome to the show, Dr. Jill.
It's great to be with you, Melissa. Thank you.
So, I am so excited to have you here today. Not only were you the very first TED Talk I ever saw, but also I took a very intensive public speaking course and we watched your TED Talk and dissected it. And so it was not just me that was enthralled by it, but everyone in the room. I ended up telling them that I'm interviewing you today, and they're all like fangirling, saying, "Oh my gosh, if I could have one person in a room, it would be her." So you made me like three notches better than I already was.
I love that. Well, and it's good to know, how people use that TED Talk because I never know. And then I get these little messages. I saw you in my psychology class, or I saw you in my theater class. Well, it's good to know I'm being used for public speaking.
Well, I am going to definitely be directing listeners to your TED Talk if they haven't seen it already, but give us a brief background on that experience.
So I grew up to study the brain because I have a brother diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he's only 18 months older than I. So he's the closest thing to me that exists in the universe. And as children, we were constant companions. And I recognized early that we were different kinds of people. And we could witness the exact same situation, but walk away with very different interpretations about what just happened. So, because of him and my relationship with him, I became very interested in what is normal, what am I, what is human life, and body language, facial language, intonation, all of that. So I eventually grew up to become a brain scientist, a neuroanatomist. And so I was teaching and performing research at Harvard Medical School. And then one day I woke up and I had a major hemorrhage in the left half of my brain. And over the course of 4 hours, then I watched my brain completely deteriorate in its ability to process information. So after that morning, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. And I essentially was an infant in a woman's body. And then it took 8 years of intense work for me to completely recover.
So, because of your previous work and studying the brain, it gave you sort of additional insight during that experience. But it's interesting because as I was listening to you for the very first time, I thought, it almost sounds like being on some sort of drug or something like that, and a lot of times when people leave an experience like that, they don't have that kind of recollection. Was it because of your understanding of the brain that you were able to track that process in that way?
I think that it was a combination of one, I was educated about the anatomy of the brain. So I think in terms of cells and circuits. So when my hearing, for example, was different, not normal, I automatically traced information into the ears, into the auditory circuit, how it crosses over, how it gets up into the auditory cortex. So I think in terms of circuitry. And so for me, if I'm having peripheral vision problems, I know what that means at an anatomical level. So I think about it and I notice it in a way that somebody else might not be able to differentiate what was going on, what was the problem. So during that whole morning of the stroke, I was analyzing the experience, not only having the experience and trying to save my life, but what was actually going on at the level of my brain. So I was observing this experience, and I would essentially have a whole brain, and then the left brain would go off. And the left brain is the part of our consciousness that connects us to the external world. So I ended up with a right hemisphere that was in the present moment, in the peaceful euphoria of the right here, right now, where I feel as big as the universe. And then I would waffle back into that circuitry would come back online. And then I would regain function in the external world, get a few steps closer to rescuing myself. And then I would drift right back out. So through the eyes of a scientist, it was a fascinating experience to watch the deterioration, and it brought to life, like a really bad movie, everything I had learned in my academics of understanding brain anatomy, because here it was up close and personal. So it was fascinating and devastating all at the same time.
In your newest book, you talked about how when the cells in the left hemisphere did experience that trauma and shut down, you didn't just lose cells and skill sets, you lost a part of your personality. Can you paint a picture of what that was for us? Like, what was lost and what was it like to experience that?
So I brought of course, I have a little brain model here. If I can get it. Now it's falling apart. So my left brain's going, oh no, my brain is falling apart. Very much like that morning. So give me half a moment here. Okay, so here's a brain model. And the brain is divided into two hemispheres. And on the morning of my stroke, and normally people are using their whole brain. So right now, both of my hemispheres, your hemispheres, are contributing to how you're perceiving this moment. So right now, you're looking, you're observing, you're in the present moment, you're learning, you're in the present moment. And at the same time, you're associating it with information that you already have, which is about that left hemisphere. So the left hemisphere is the hemisphere that I lost on the morning of the stroke. And when you think about what does the left hemisphere do, the right hemisphere is a right here, right now machine. It's all about the present moment. So it's bringing information in from the external world and processing it in the present moment. So I'm going to have emotions about the present moment and thinking of the present moment. The left hemisphere is a time capsule in that it gives me temporality. I have a past and I have a future. Well, I don't have a past and I don't have a future. I have a right here, right now. But because this machine is designed to bring information in about the present moment and compare it to any experience I've had over time, that's these amazing cells that create that level of consciousness. And in the past and future, I have emotion and I have thinking. So what happened for me on the morning of the stroke, when the left hemisphere went offline, I lost my emotional tissue, which is going to be all of my emotions from the past. Well, my emotions from the past are excited. It's any trauma that I've ever had. It's any pain or emotion of the past that is negative or positive. So even my elation or the pride that I felt when I graduated with my doctorate, it disappeared, as did all the trauma from growing up in relationship with someone who was not well. And then all of my academic knowledge that I had learned in the past, I lost all of that because this is where language is stored. So I lost the left hemisphere. I lost the group of cells in my thinking tissue that defines the boundaries of where I begin and end. I know that this is my face, but these glasses are not a part of me because I have a group of cells in my brain that define me holographically for my perception of self. So now I have an individual. I have an ego. I have individuality. I have a name. I have an address. I have a telephone number. I have an education. Me in that left hemisphere. So I lost essentially when that hemisphere went offline, everything that had anything to do with me, the individual, but I still had a whole consciousness of the present moment where I experienced myself to be as big as the universe. But I lost the emotions of my past, and that's a character. And I lost the thinking part of my brain, which is also a character. So that thinking part of my left brain is my alpha personality. She has a to-do list. She defines where I begin and where I end. She defines what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. She creates with language, so she communicates with the external world. She likes to be in control of people people, places, and things. She actually cares that I put my stapler back where my stapler belongs, because she has a preconceived notion about what is right and what is wrong. And we all know that that's a personality. I have that personality, you have that personality, and that personality, that get it done girl, is very different than the emotional, painful personality character of my past. So when I lost that left hemisphere, I lost both of those characters, but in the absence of them, what I gained were the characters of the right here, right now experience.
So in your rehabilitation, was that a prolonged period where you were still living on like one side of the brain, where it kind of felt this you didn't have a beginning or end, or did you get that back faster? And also, did you start to get those emotional parts of your past back, or did you have to did you rehabilitate your brain and then basically start that part from scratch, if that makes sense?
Sure. So when you think about, well, what is that left brain? That left brain is cells. Cells perform a specific function in circuits. So in my brain, the emotional tissue, I lost that personality. She's gone. I don't have I don't have the same emotions of my past that I did before the stroke. Now, I can remember traumatic things or great things that happened in my past, but they don't have an emotion attached to them, if you know what I mean.
That sounds so freeing. Well, the losing the traumatic parts, I guess.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I have to say, losing the good parts was worth losing the bad parts. It was amazing. So, but that was gone forever. So that character, though, she got reborn on the morning of the stroke. She started over again. So I do have that character, but since the stroke, not before the stroke. The thinking character, she came back online, and she came back because of the language. I regained language. I had to learn to speak from scratch, but it came back quickly because I had known language before. Once the swelling and inflammation from the trauma in that left hemisphere calmed down, and I had surgery to remove a blood clot the size of a golf ball, then that left hemisphere thinking character could begin to come back online. But I had to learn everything again. I did not know what a mother was, much less who my mother was. And so I had to regain language. I had to regain an identity, an individuality. And it took, I say it was 8 years before I felt as though I was an individual again and no longer a fluid. I had become a solid again instead of being a fluid. So it was quite a wild trip.
So from that experience, how did that change the way that you relate to your brain or understand how you're able to sort of access the left versus the right brain?
Well, I gained a really clear understanding about what's in my right hemisphere. What is the emotion of the present moment? The emotion of the present moment, which I refer to as, I talk about this as 4 characters. The 2 characters in the left hemisphere, and then character 3 and character 4 in the right hemisphere. So what I gained when I lost the left hemisphere's inhibition on that right hemisphere was the emotion of the present moment. And the emotion of the present moment is experiential. What does it feel like to have my clothing against my body? How much humidity is there in the air? And it's an adrenaline junkie. It wants to go jump into the lake and swim. It wants to feel the water. It wants to enjoy as it moves through water. So it's very experiential. So if you like to do wild, high risk things, then that's your emotions of the present moment, character 3 personality. And then the thinking of the present moment. Imagine what it's like to just have a present moment. You don't have a past, which means you don't have any relationships. with people, and you don't have a relationship with a job, and you don't have any of the stress circuitry that goes with people and relationships and work, and all you have is the right here, right now, and you don't have the definition of self as an individual. Instead, you feel as though you're big as the universe. And so the feeling of that part of our brain is where our deep inner peace rests. It's the part of us that is simply filled with gratitude that we exist at all. I am alive. What a wonder, in awe that I have life, I have eyes that see, I have hands that can manipulate space, I have voice that allows me to speak language. It's mind-boggling that I exist at all. I mean, when you really stop and think about what is life, wow. Wow. I mean, it's just a big wow. To me, it's just like a really big wow. It's unfathomable that somehow the energies of the universe work together in perfect order in order to manifest not just a single-celled organism, which is a single semi-permeable membrane dividing what is outside of itself from what is inside of itself, so that it can be stimulated by what's outside and it can interact with what's outside, which to me is the meaning of life, is to stimulate and be stimulated by, right down to the single cell, much less 50 trillion molecular geniuses all packed together as a human being. I mean, if anybody in your audience doesn't have an amazing awe and sense of gratitude that they exist at all, they're forgetting to look at the miracle of what life is. And that is what the character 4 is of our right thinking tissue. So tapping into that blissful euphoria, that awe, that amazement, that sense of incredible, intense gratitude that I exist at all, regardless of the weird stuff going on in my daily life. Outside of that, shifting into this magnificence of what we are, wow, that's the consciousness we want to tap into when we meditate or when we go into prayer.
You had mentioned in your book the split brain studies that were done decades ago, and it created this kind of movement of people talking about if they were left brain people or right brain people, or if their children were left brain or right brained. But you mentioned that the way that it was used didn't really create well-rounded kids. It caused them just to move further into the side of their brain that was already dominant. What should we have taken from those studies?
So I think what we should have taken from those studies is that we have two very different consciousnesses inside of our heads. And we already know that. We have an ability to shift into the present moment, experiential, and we have an ability to actually shift into a past or to remember or to dream about what am I having for dinner this evening. We have the ability to step out of one consciousness into another consciousness. And yes, in those days, if you had a child who excelled at more right brain, creative, artistic, we should have stuck them in engineering and helped them train their engineering, linear, methodical thinking so that they could become more whole-brained. And then the same thing for the left brain, methodical type of thinkers. We should have taken them and had them use their methodology, but out in nature, and use their right brain so that they could become more whole-brain developed. And we did exactly the opposite thing. We wanted our children to achieve, so we put them in classes where they would excel instead of actually really struggle. So I think that was a miss, and I think that partially because of that, we now exist in a society that is extremely skewed to the left hemisphere value structure.
So your whole book is really about how to get to know these 4 characters of your brain and understanding them from a different level. And so then we can understand how to maybe move to one when we see it as a benefit of doing that. Can you go a little bit deeper into how we can actually observe ourselves to know when we are too heavily leaned to one part of our brain, and when we need to use practices to kind of even ourselves out a little bit?
Absolutely. So we think about the brain as this one big mass, and it is a big mass, but it's made up of these four primary modules of cells, these two emotional groups of cells and these two thinking groups of cells. And we do have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be in the world. And that was how I ended that TED Talk. We have the power to choose which group of cells we want to dominate at any time. So you can choose right now to go have a business call. Right now, we're on Skype. We both show up as our character one. We're in our left thinking. We knew to wash our hair. We knew to put on our clothes. We knew how to be punctual, to look at each other at the same time. So we know how to organize our lives so that we can be functional human beings. We can choose that at any time. Or we can be emotionally triggered, or we can think about something that makes us really sad about ourselves, or we can think about somebody we're really mad at and we're holding resentment about because they said something or they did something years ago that, I still haven't forgiven that person for that. And I can choose to run that circuitry. And that's that little character two, pain of the past. And we can hook into that at any moment. And then there are some people who we have our little emotional trigger set out for them to just tromp on, and then they hurt our feelings and we feel bad, or they make us angry, or they make us sad, or they make us we just want to fight with them, and that's that character too. And we have the power to choose to go into that or to prolong once we are in that. We also have the ability to go into the present moment playful spirit that is creative and open and expansive, and it's friendly, and it wants to play, and it colors out of the lines, because the left brain is the part that says, no, you got to color inside of the lines. And by the way, those leaves ought to be painted green instead of blue. And it's like, no, my right brain doesn't care. I like this color blue. I'm going to make a blue tree. It doesn't care. It's just open to all possibility. And then we can choose to walk in nature and calm ourselves, and to feel a sense of gratitude that we are alive, and that we have the ability to share this planet with other beautiful souls. And wow, humanity, parts of it might be a mess, but part of it are so beautiful. And I want to be a part of the beauty, and I want to encourage that piece of who I am. So once we know who these four characters are inside of our brain, we have the power to choose moment by moment. And those conversations going on inside of your head where you're having conflict or disagreement, it's probably those four different characters in conversation. And when you get to know who's doing the speaking, but based on their values and what they want, then everything starts to make a whole lot more sense about what's going on inside of your brain. And it's not like, oh, I'm just running on automatic reactivity, and I do have some say in who and how I want to be. And wow, if that's not personal freedom, I don't know what is.
It kind of reminds me of Napoleon Hill, his book Think and Grow Rich. He talks about this concept of like a mastermind and getting to know different people that you idolize. And the more you know them, the more you start to understand how you think, and then you can consult them when you're making a big decision. Only this is bringing it all into the parts of yourself and realizing that you have these sort of different personalities depending on what part of your brain that you're accessing. And so depending on if you're feeling unbalanced, which can be caused by environmental factors, who you're around, if you're stressed or not, and you can kind of consult these different areas of your brain and bring them to the forefront. And I love that, because so much of this show is about understanding that you have more power life when you just know yourself better. And so what types of questions should we be asking ourselves to better get to know the different characters of our brain?
So I look at each of these characters and I say, okay, first of all, identify that part of yourself. Who is that A-type personality that likes to go to work? Give that character a name. You know that character very well. So I call mine Helen. It's short for Hell on Wheels. She gets it done. So then I ask myself, well, who likes Helen? Well, other character ones like Helen a lot because Helen is hell on wheels and she gets it done. People know that they can count on Helen. Helen's going to show up on time. She's going to be very methodical in how she thinks. She's going to keep to-do lists, like to-do lists everywhere. Helen's got it organized, right? So I get to know that. Who does not get along with my Helen? Well, there are people, they call me up and I answer the phone as Helen, and Helen says, hello. And then they say so and so, and I say, it's good to hear from you. What can I do for you? Right? Because I'm busy. I'm doing my to-do list. So it's like, no, I don't want to go into my character 3 and just be a chatty, playful person. I'm busy right now. And my friends recognize Helen and they'll say, well, hello, Helen. I hope you're having a good day. Do you think maybe someone could call me back later this evening? And I know what they're saying. They're saying, well, I don't really want to talk to Helen. I want Jill, or I want, character number 3 who has another name. We'll talk about that one. But it's a matter of really paying attention to each of these characters. Who gets along and what likes that person? Who doesn't get along with it? If you go home as your character 1 because you've been in character 1 at work all day, and you come home and the kids' rooms are a disaster, and you bring Helen home, what's Helen going to do? Helen's going to holler at the kids. You kids, you need to clean up your room because Helen has come home and needs order. Well, what if my more playful character 3 comes home? Well, I think the kids would like that a whole lot more. And so then, they may come running up and bombarding me because they really like that part of me. But kids know to stay away when the character 1s are out. And then the character 2 is this not very happy, I'm not good. And if I'm not good, misery loves miserable company. And I don't want you to be good either. And that's when everybody pretty much flees, unless there are some people in our life who know how to help us heal ourselves. And so when I was in my little character 2, I would call my mom, and my mom would become her character 4, which was loving and open and filled with gratitude. And she was supportive and she was nurturing. And so we think about, you can roadmap your different characters. You can roadmap how they communicate with one another, and you can roadmap other people in your life and how other people interact with each of your characters. And if you have a character then that is often a character 2, and you go and you hang out with them, and then you don't feel better when you're with them, you kind of move into your character 2, and then you go home, and then your family has to manage your character 2 because now you're not very happy either, then you need to pay attention to the routinized patterns of how we're influencing one another, because each one of us has 4 characters. So every relationship we have, there are 8 characters here for us to navigate. And so let's say you and I are pals, and you and I, we like to play together, and we like to like go out on nature walks, and we like to chase the turtles, and we like to, just get out and go on adventures and be creative together. And so we play together as 3s really well. But then you might not like my 1 very much because, she's not as much fun as my character 3. So we get to know our relationships with one another, and we learn how to be supportive, and we can learn how to have a healthy relationship inside of our own heads between our own 4 characters, as well as in relationship with other people's 4 characters. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful tool to use.
That makes so much sense as to why there are times when I know that there's only one person I want to talk to, and it's like, it seems like the more I make a name for myself, I suppose, the more I'm seen as a certain way, the more I have these desires to be like, I just want my old friend that I hung out with when I was 22, that we could drink wine with and bitch about things. I don't want to be in my higher self today.
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly right. And we play these roles with one another, and it's like, but it can become a beautiful language for people. So I have these friends, and the wife is a school teacher, and she's very organized. She's a total character 1, but she's got a strong character 3. But she's a character 1. She teaches elementary, so she's keeping the classroom in order. She knows where she is in that hierarchy. She's now got kids on video because of the pandemic, and she organizes her home and her kids and her husband. So she's a strong character 1. And her husband, he's a strong character 3. Now he has a strong character 1, but he's a default character 3. He's fun and playful, and he wants to have a good time, and he loves to play tennis, and he works, but he really likes the fun part of his life better. So he's a primary 3. So my friend can now call him up on the telephone on the way home and say, honey, I'll tell you what, I'm coming home and I need you to be a character 1 for 30 minutes. And if you can give me character 1 for 30 minutes and help me get this done, then we can go be playful character 3s the rest of the evening. And he's thinking to himself, well, that's a deal. Yeah, come on home. I'll help you out. So then imagine if she hadn't made that phone call. So now he's at home. He's excited. She's coming home. He wants to go play tennis because he's been working hard all day, and now he wants his 3 to go out and play. And so she comes home now and she says, no, honey, I can't go play tennis. I need you to help me do this chore. And he's going, well, I don't want to do a chore. I want to go play tennis. So he moves into his character 2. And then she goes into her character 2. And it's like, well, I can't do all this alone, and I need your help, and you're not available to help me. And they ruin the evening. And just by understanding this language, we can communicate with one another so much more easily.
It's almost like a much more scientific spin on the idea of love languages. Only it makes more grounded sense. It's not just how to show love, it's more like how to actually connect with somebody else.
Yeah, how to understand, how to value, how to support, and not just someone else, but myself. So think about the relationship inside your own head. Many of us, our character 1 is very critical. It critically judges. Now, that doesn't mean it's mean. That means it is discerning differences, focusing on differences instead of similarities. So the left hemisphere, I might be a workaholic. I might have found that the best way for me to not be in my emotional pain and my trauma from the past is for me to put in a 40, 50, 60-hour week. So I'm busy. And And then my character 3 comes online and says, gosh, I'd really like to go to the sewing store and pick out some new fabric because I'd like to make something. And then the character 1's coming on going, what a waste of time. I can't afford that time. I got to work. We got to work. We got a job. Da-da. And so the 1 cannot respect the value or the desires of a whole part of ourselves. And so what happens then is we just become so much more skewed in that left brain circuitry, which is our stress circuitry, and we never get the pause. And we have to have, as living organisms, we are a push and a pause. We are a push and a pause. We're not like a robot that you plug in or a computer that you plug in and it runs and runs and runs and runs and runs until the battery runs dead, and then you got to get a new battery or get a new machine. We're not like that. We're living creatures. So we have to have a push and we have to have the pause. And the push is in that left brain that says, let's get it done. Let's do the job. Let's show up for what we need to show up for. And then the right brain comes in and says, so let's say the left brain is trying to work out a mathematical equation or whatever, some proof or some kind of problem, any personal problem. And we're just like, we're thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And we're just feeling stress about it. Well, when we walk away from that and we go and we cook a pleasant dinner with somebody we enjoy, or we go for a nice walk in nature, or we go for a run or a swim or whatever it is we like to do athletically, get back into our body, get back into the present moment, then it's like we get refreshed. And then, oh yeah, when we go back to work, we work better. We work better because we gave ourselves some space to try to figure out options, possibilities for solutions.
So you have a practice called the brain huddle. That's sort of what you started to touch on there, and how to work with these different areas of our brain or understand when we need to have that pause. Explain what the brain used for and what the benefits are.
So the brain huddle is the action of these four characters, and I personally I'll take a brain huddle 20 or 30 times a day, and all it is it's based on BRAIN, the acronym. Of course it is brain. So B stands for breath. So our breath is the first thing that happens when we become alive, and it is the last thing we do before we die. So the breath is in the present moment. So as soon as we bring our mind to the breath, we breathe in, we let it out, we bring in a consciousness of the present moment. Well, if you're really going to have a piece, a time, where am I? What's going on? Remember to be conscious about the present moment. B, breath. Bring your mind to the present moment. R is recognize which of these four characters am I in? Who just called the brain huddle? Right? Who just called it? So my character one, Helen, she might call the brain huddle right now. So I'm going to have a brain huddle. Team, we're having a huddle. Okay. So B, breath. I'm breathing in the present moment. R, recognize which character called it on. Okay. Helen called it on. A is appreciate the fact that I have four of me in here. Okay. Helen happened to be online in that moment, but I got four of me in here. So I appreciate that I have four. A, inquire. Well, which one do I want to be? Do I want to stay in my one, or might I want little Pigpen, my character fun 3, to pop out? Because she's completely different. She's a whole different interview. She's got other things to talk about. She's excited about other kinds of things. It's amazing. So inquire, well, which one's appropriate to bring out? Which one? But they're talking together. They're all online. And then N stands for navigate. Navigate, well, the next moment, which one is it appropriate for me to show up as? But it's moment by moment by moment. In the present moment, a moment, it's not just like a second and then it's gone. A moment might be putting my socks on. It might be 10 seconds. It might be 30 seconds. But a moment is a moment. A moment, and then navigate the next moment. So one moment I might be one character, and then the next moment, another one will pop in. But if I'm consciously paying attention and I'm consciously choosing to call 20 or 30 brain huddles in the course of a day, then I'm really paying attention. I mean, let's say somebody calls me up and they just make me really mad. Right? All of a sudden, I'm just like triggered. I'm angry. Boom, straight into character 2. And I know I'm in character 2. You know when you're in character 2 because you are not happy. You're already like bite something, right? And you're growling and you want to share that growl with other people and you want to just stomp and you want to maybe, you want to go diss somebody in public. A whole lot of that's going on right now, right? We have lost our manners. So that's our little character 2 just bouncing out at these people who have done nothing to deserve our hostilities. But anyway, I know when I'm in my character 2, and that's a great time to call a brain huddle because it's like, okay, I'm unhappy. I don't feel safe. From the moment I think a thought that stimulates a negative emotion or a positive emotion, and then a physiological chemical gets dumped into my bloodstream, it flushes through me and floods out of me. That takes less than 90 seconds. So when I feel that my little character 2 hostile, unhappy, feeling resentful, feeling fearful, feeling embarrassment, feeling frustrated, feeling exasperated, feeling all of those things that were a lot that count on something that in the past that has happened, then I know when I'm in that character 2. And my character 2 has the power to say, breathe. I mean, how many times do we do this anyway? breathe. But what we're doing is we're breathing, we're focusing our minds into the present moment, and then just go through the rest of the brain. Recognize in this moment, I'm feeling pretty hostile. It's my character too. I call her Abby. She's been for abandonment. She's not happy. It's not good. No, people don't want to be around her. So BR, recognize I'm in my 2A, appreciate the fact that I've got these other three characters backing me up. And all the energy in my brain has gone into that hostile little character too. And I just need to expand that out and choose. Okay, well, what can Helen do in order to create some order in the world so that this doesn't happen again? Helen's a fix-it machine. Helen wants to help. Character 4, she wants to come in and be nurturing and loving and help little Abby feel like she's not alone. And then little character 3, I call Pigpen. Pigpen wants to come in and take Abby out to play. So recognizing that I have the power in any moment to pick and choose which of these characters I want to have navigate next, and to know, for them to know that they have the support of the rest of the brain team.
A lot of these examples are around when we realize that we're being too analytical or hostile or judgmental, and how to come back to the present moment. What are some examples of when it goes the opposite way? We need to be a little bit more left brain than right.
So the teenage brain is a fantastic example of chaos, right? Chaos at a neurological level, the teenage brain, right before puberty hits, the brain, it creates more connections between the cells, more synapses between the cells, and that lasts until about the time puberty actually hits. But if you know these tweeners, they're before the teens, they're brilliant. They're like little suction machines. They're sponges. They want to understand everything. They want to understand why. They want to understand. They want to learn. They want to read. They want to play. They want to do this. They want to do that. Now, the disadvantage of the chaotic mind is that it's distractible. But the beauty of the chaotic mind is that it's filled with a lot of stuff, right? So then during the puberty years, the kids actually lose half of the synaptic connections in their brain. So they actually lose half their minds. So that's a good example of I live in chaos. I used to know who I was. I was very familiar. I had these certain friends, little girl friends when I was a little girl, little boys and little girls. And I like to do certain things, and I like to do crafts, and I like to swim, and I like to do this with them, and I like to do this over there. But then all of a sudden, I'm going through this neurological rearrangement. So I barely even recognize myself. On top of that, I've got a body spurt going on for growth. I've got hormones blowing through me so that 1 minute I'm happy and 1 minute I'm crying, and that's like life is hard, and it's all biological. And then we get really aggressive because we're actually growing testosterone receptors on our amygdala, and the amygdala is the group of cells in each hemisphere that is designed to ask the question, am I safe? So if information's coming in and I'm not feeling safe, then I move into my fear, I move into my rage, I move into my anger, my testosterone's off the charts. And that's a natural environment for more right brain chaos. And there are times when it's really important. This is why structure is so good for teenagers, because then we are imposing on them, well, if this kid is on a football team, then now he's going to practice. And practice is at a predictable time. And he's going to hang out and do predictable things in his body. Or he's going to be a member of the chess team. And in chess now, he's going to have a certain level of methodical, linear, cognitive thinking, which is going to be that left hemisphere character 1. So we can purposefully use structure in order to help that right hemisphere that feels like it's just kind of randomized and bring it back to some order. I mean, we are whole brain living. That's the ultimate goal, is to have these two beautiful halves work together as a whole.
So during your recovery process from the trauma to your brain, I almost feel like it might have been a blessing that it was the left side that went off, because you couldn't have been so judgmental during your recovery process. How did you see the 4 characters working together while you were trying to recover, especially you had lost a lot of faculties until you had gained that back. I mean, it sounds like it might have been difficult.
Well, it was really difficult, and part of that was because I didn't realize that I had lost characters. All I knew was that I had lost skill sets. And it wasn't until I started recovering the circuits, the cells and the circuits, that character one ended up getting stronger and stronger. So I could not read, write, or recall any of my life. So I lost my reading, writing, and my arithmetic, which is very left brain skills, and language. So I had no language, and I lost that group of cells that defined the boundaries of where I began and where I ended. So I knew that I was missing skills, but I did not realize that I was missing personalities until that character one came completely back around and said, well, now that I'm back, I'd like to be the boss again. And I thought, no, we love you. We are grateful for you. But oh my gosh, we want to choose the deep inner peace of the present moment experience over what we had before. Now, we are grateful that you're back online, and we cannot be a functional, rational human being without you, but you're going to be in service to all of us. We are all going to be in service together. And that's a completely different negotiation about a democracy inside of my head than Helen being the mighty ruler again.
So what is going on with the four characters of the brain when somebody is dealing with something like addiction or alcoholism?
So when you think about the craving part of our brain is in our left hemisphere, and it's in the emotional character 2 tissue. And this is a group of cells called the insular cortex. And the insular cortex is where craving happens. And I drink because I crave the alcohol, or I crave a high, or I crave my games, my technology games, or I crave sex, or whatever it is I'm addicted to is going to be in that craving of that character too. And this is so important because we're all pretty much addicted to something. We might be addicted to activity, we might be addicted to work, we might be addicted to our relationships. We're all, and addiction is going to be, what do we crave? Well, I crave movement. I have to have activity or I become depressed. So I don't care about gray skies. I'm good with that. I don't care if it rains. I'm good with that. I need movement. I don't care what kind of movement it is, but I need movement. And but that's my character too. And so if we have a problem with addiction or alcohol, and we're going to go through a rehabilitation program in order to chill that out and get rid of that addiction, then character 2 has to participate in the rehabilitation program, because Helen, character 1, can come in and she can say, okay, what are the hoops I have to jump through? Okay, I need to stay sober. Okay, so I need to stay sober for 30 days. Okay, I need to dress like this. I need to do my personal hygiene. I need to do that. I need to go to this group therapy. I need to do this. I can jump through those hoops as a character 1 or a character 3 or even as a character 4 and look clean. But the problem is still there if my little character 2, which is the one in pain, which is the one that has the problem, that part of our personality has to participate in the rehabilitation process, or we'll probably go into relapse.
So how do we bring that character into that rehabilitation process?
So, I think that this takes it all right down to getting to know our 4 characters. When you know your pain, so many of us use something to get ourselves away from our pain. We exist in a society that, as soon as I start to feel hunger, I think I need to eat. Because of that, I may be addicted to food and I may be obese. If I have any emotional pain at all, then, oh, I want to go have that glass of wine with my girlfriend. And then we can just kind of moan till the cows come home about, how he done me wrong or whatever it is. So really getting to know that pain and realizing that our emotional pain is a group of cells inside of our brain. Now, it is horrible. It feels horrible. But it is powerful beyond measure. People kill for that pain. People commit suicide over that pain. People do all kinds of crazy addictions and behaviors because of that pain. But the pain is a group of cells inside of our brain. And when we recognize that we have all the energy in the brain has gone to that circuit, and it seems so powerful, and it feels like it's never ending, and it's going to go on and on and on. And then I become related to that's who I am, and my pain is who I am. And it's like, no, it's not. It's a part of our brain. And we do have the power to get to know and strengthen the other characters. And that's one reason why it is so important, Melissa, that we get to know these 4 characters, because they are the ones that are healthy. So how do I create health inside of my own self? I figure out when I move into my pain, what can my character 1 do to help me? Well, if I'm an alcoholic, character 1 might want to not have alcohol in the house. Or I might not, go out for a drink with my girlfriends if I know that, I'm going to be at a bar and alcohol is available, and it's not good for me to get started with that. So character 1 can say, Melissa, instead of going to the bar, why don't we go for a walk through the park? Or why don't we go for a picnic here? Let's go do this instead. And then hopefully my friend recognizes that this is a healthy thing for me. And so you're going to support me in that. And we're going to go do something other than set me up for failure. But at the same time, I have this character 4 right here inside of my head. And my character 4 and your character 4 is so elated that we exist at all. And character 4 recognizes the magnificent beauty of what we are as living beings, and that life is this tiny little amount of time. If we get, 20 years or 120 years, doesn't matter. Life is this miracle, and whatever it is a precious, precious thing. And we have it. And wow, just the wow, let that awe sink in about, oh my gosh, I'm alive. And allow that part to come in and nurture and hold and support and love the pain of our little character 2, so that little character 2 doesn't feel alone, because character 2 is not alone. She is a group of cells inside of our brain that it has an ego group of cells saying, I'm separate from all that is, but I'm as big as the universe. Wipe out those cells. I'm open and I'm expansive. And what's it feel like when you stand at the mountaintop and you look over the vastness, and it's like, wow, life, wow, the planet Earth, wow, how everything works together and how beautiful it all is. And allow the different characters inside of our own brain to self-soothe that little character 2. And that is mental health. That is how we increase our own mental health.
Oh, I feel like so many need that, especially given everything that's been going on in the world recently. So much of that last character makes me think of plant medicine experiences, which I'm sure you may have heard about the similarities. Has it ever piqued your interest to try that because of your experience with your stroke?
So are you talking about, what are you talking about? Be more specific.
Like ayahuasca or different things that people use, especially with more research coming up about how it does help addiction or trauma or things like that.
Right. So a lot of people say my experience of stroke, other than the fact that mine lasted 8 years and I had to, claw my way back, is very similar to a psilocybin trip, mushrooms. No, my answer to your question is no. I fought and worked so hard to get my brain healthy again that I will never purposely compromise it again. So the answer is no. Fortunately, I don't like alcohol, so that's pretty much a not an issue. And I have zero temptation. However, um, that's because I've had this experience. Now, for people with post traumatic stress disorder, for people who absolutely cannot find their way out of their character two, under certain guidelines with professionals, microdosing, different medications, different plants, different whatever drugs, can prove to be insightful, so that just recognizing, oh my gosh, I spend so much time mulling over the details and the pain of it, and I get caught in those loops, and I've not been able to get out, but now I have a glimpse of something else, of what these other people have had, then that often will download an enormous volume of stress inside of people, simply because now they know that they don't have to take themselves so seriously. So I personally know, I doubt if I'll ever make those explorations of biohacking. But it's quite common right now, and under protective circumstances, I think that that's a positive thing. But anytime you abuse the brain, you're killing cells. And you're not just killing cells, you're opening up new circuits. And literally a third, my brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I grew up to study schizophrenia. So that was my area of expertise at Harvard. And I looked at the cells and the circuits of that. And a third of the cases of schizophrenia, and in order to be defined as or diagnosed with schizophrenia, you have to have a delusional thinking system, and you have to experience hallucination. Well, these are cellular structures and the way that the brain organizes. And literally a third of the cases of schizophrenia can be induced and have been induced by drug use. So I think it's really important that people recognize, if you're going to take a hallucinogen, and you're essentially saying to my brain, okay, brain, I want you to hallucinate. And so the brain has a hallucinating circuit. And so it goes in and it turns on that circuit, maybe by inhibiting or turning off other cells that are inhibiting that circuit. But you're telling your brain to hallucinate. Well, what if your brain doesn't get the memo that it's supposed to turn that hallucinating circuit off? And that's what's happening in a third of these cases. So people continue to have that circuitry running, and they have ongoing hallucination. And with that then comes a delusional thinking system, because their reality, their perception of reality has now been shifted. So I think it's really important that people pay close attention to what they're doing to their brains, because these are just little living organisms. And we need them to work right in order to be able to be functional humans.
That's so terrifying. So what do you do now to maintain your brain health? Because I'm sure that's something that is of even more importance to you now than before your experience.
My number one is sleep. I sleep. I play hard. I work hard during the day. I burn my energy. I keep I'm calling these brain huddles all day long. So I'm pretty mentally healthy and happy about it all. But I really buzz myself out, and I go to sleep when I'm tired, and I don't wake up until I'm done sleeping. I allow myself to get whatever my brain wants. But sleep is when the garbage collectors come in. I mean, you got to remember, these are cells, billions of little cells. They're eating, they're creating poop. Literally, I did say that. They're creating waste inside of your brain, and you have to, when you go to sleep, that's when the garbage cleaners come in and they clear out the waste. And that's why if you don't get plenty of sleep, you actually feel foggy in the brain, because you need more sleep. You need to clear out the waste. So sleep is number one. And then I pay very close attention to how much different nutrition, how much sugar am I eating? The sugar molecule is shaped in such a way that it's like a razor blade. So when it runs through your blood vascular system, it's literally cutting the walls. And that's why you're causing inflammation inside of your body. It's because you're creating damage, and then all the immune system has to go there and do repair. And that happens as a natural response of inflammation. So sugar creates inflammation. How much caffeine am I drinking? How much sugar am I taking? How much? I just paying attention to how do different foods feel inside of my body. Am I allergic to eggs? And if I'm allergic to eggs, then eggs are going to create more inflammation in my body. I'm going to feel sluggish. I'm going to have low energy. So I pay a lot of attention, one, to sleep, and two, to my nutrition, and number three, movement. Move your body. We are not plants waving in the breeze. We are human beings. We have legs to move. We have arms to use. We have heads to think. We have mouths to use. Get it moving. Keep the blood vessels going and pumping. So those are my three big ones.
Well, thank you so much for your research in this area. And I'm just so honored to be able to do this interview. This was my favorite hour of today. So, for listeners that are interested in learning more about you and your newest book, where is the best place for them to connect with you online?
drjilltaylor.com is the best. And the new book is called Whole Brain Living: The Anatomy of Choice and the Four Characters That Drive Our Life.